Russia was bold to say that it wanted to increase military cooperation with Myanmar.
Yeah.
Russia, on February 1st, Russia was openly endorsed the junta under the leadership of Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, both verbally and through action. Russia is seizing a great opportunity to situate itself in the middle of the Indo-Pacific region, despite its constant denial of such geographic designs. It is a godsend strategic window for Moscow that could yield early results, and it will not want to miss out on it. Russia's Defense Minister Alexander Fomin, who was in Myanmar for a 2-day visit and attended the Armed Forces Day on Saturday, was the first high-profile.
I did not see any example country Russia built successfully and successful country or a developed country. I never seen. So your suggestion is Russia may be good, but
Yes.
I don't see there is any case Russia has done, you know.
Well, I think Mongolia is a good example.
Yeah, Mongolia is still poor country and not yet consolidated democracy and not mature. I mean, they are not yet developed country. So what I mean nation building mean we want to be prosperous country. We want to be
you can look at
free and you know, democratic country. That is
there is in a sense building. But there is no example. There is no example of a country with or without Russia that has achieved that, I think.
Yes, like South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, those are very successful.
South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. Okay, so South Korea, I think you can, that's where you are now. That's the, that is partly due to Korea's own, you know, inertia as a nation, and also because of its relationship with Japan and with the United States.
Of course,
and
Western
their ability
democratic countries support and they push to build the nation. Very successful because of a Western country like US.
Well, and they've been successful at resisting becoming a part of China, and China has been trying to take them over. You know, and the current president of South Korea, Moon, is now seen as a kind of Chinese puppet. If he loses in the 2022 elections, then I think you know you have a chance for Korea to continue to develop, you know, as an independent country. But Korea is also, you know, in a somewhat delicate situation. So too, for certainly Taiwan is on a kind of a, you know, on a precipice. It's on a razor's edge, and Japan, where I am, that's a very long conversation.
Of course,
but again, their ability to resist becoming part of China is probably the first thing that you notice.
South
and again,
Korea and Japan is not yet liberal democracy, but they are consolidated democracy. Military or any security force can step from behind. They cannot coup in those countries, but they are not yet liberal democracy. Freedom of individual and, you know, society is very restricted. Maybe Japan is much liberal than South Korea, maybe.
I don't know. My read
they are
is different.
consolidated democracy.
Yeah,
and they are developed economy. So that is.
I think the lens of liberal democracy may be in too abstract of a framework when you're talking about East Asia. That might not be the best frame to put it in.
I mean, not liberal. I mean, because they are still restriction of freedom of expression and a lot of judicial.
There's quite a bit of that in there's quite a bit of that in Japan.
A lot of court and police security force, a lot of corruption and abuse power are still existing. So they are not yet liberal democracy.
Yeah,
but they are neither you know, uh, anytime democracy can break down. No, they are conciliated democracy. Democracy cannot break down in Japan, Korea. The people doesn't vote for NLD. They vote for Aung San Suu Kyi. Without Aung San Suu Kyi, NLD is nothing. I mean, democracy in Burma is Aung San Suu Kyi. There's nothing more than that. So because it is personalized, personal worshiping, still emotionally, charismatic leader in the country, because we are not enough mature yet, so we cannot able to follow up scientific way by a lot of people, but who are very mature, who know international system and political science. They fed up with the emotional based political system. We are not worshiping, personal worshiping, or emotional way of building the nation. We don't interest anymore such kind of thing. But innocent people, uneducated, a lot of majority, they are still based on emotional. They build nation based on emotional. So this complicated and consequences of the factor inside Burma. Even this a new government, I thought they might be a fresh idea and they should follow modern nation building, scientific way of building, but they are repeating again with a previous nation building. It is a not good signal. It's still bad among Burmese political leaders. That is a current situation. So this is failed state in Burma. Till now, it is failed state. Military destroyed the country, shooting, and civilian government is out of control. I don't know how much they can meet together. Even they can able to talk each other among minister, so-called the government officer, minister by new government. So that is a terrible thing. It's failed state. It is failed state. I don't know next month.
Government.
Historically present mean they did it by force, by weapon. They took power by force. I mean,
Well, exactly. Aung San, when he was negotiating with Lord Mountbatten, used the threat of force to get the British essentially to withdraw early. The British wanted to stay on, and they wanted to stay on and protect the rights of the hill people.
British know the
frontier
behavior
areas.
of the mainland Burman. They are very rude and they are very, bullying. They will not build the nation. British know very well. They know they will destroy the country and they will abuse the people. That's why British want to remain and they want to help for building nation in Burma. But the extremists, as we already told previous video, they don't want British present in the country. They want to kick them out British quickly. That is the behavior.
Yes.
That's still the military behavior till today. So we already discussed. Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
So the only silver lining in this dark cloud, the only good thing on the horizon that I see is the intervention of Russia.
Well,
that Russia has made a careful study of the various factors at play in nation building. They have a long experience of nation building, and although they're not perfect, they're they're better than any of the alternatives.
No, Russia. I'm very down about Russian because I think Russian why they are doing like that because Russian itself is also not clear about the position about human value because Russian is still pretty much controlled by autocratic, you know, like Putin and those people. It's not real democracy. Russian people are now still under control, autocratic. So Russia are still struggling for democracy. Even they are not yet consolidated democracy. So that is Russian problem. Until
I don't think
Russians solve it out, democracy consolidation and human right value among the people, if the people until they have liberal freedom in their country, their contribution to the outside the country will be a lot of authoritarian system. They are abusive, they are oppressive, they do same line of authoritarian to different country in North Korea, in many Middle East country, and now again in Burma. So that is Russian problem. You know, the Russian is no reason to involve in Burma because of weapon thing and autocratic things that they are involving in Burma. It's not good. That is another Russian problem.
well, I don't think you can think of liberal democracy values as a function of the current government. I think it's a function of the societal values going forward historically.
Yeah,
So,
Russian in
what
Western
country
society,
has the
right?
most liberal democratic values? You could say it was the United States that
Mm,
has the most liberal democratic values.
yes.
Why is that? Partly it's a function of the government structure, but mostly it's a function of the inertia of the culture, the values of you could say Greek democracy, more accurately to say German
Yeah.
democracy, and
French
the French. Yes, it's the acquired cultural inertia
and
that
Christian value.
allows those values to be respected. You could say the same thing if you said that the UK was the
Yeah.
most liberal democratic country or any other government that you wanted to choose. Um, and currently, the government in the United States is not very democratic. Uh, so these kind of, but the values of the society, one could argue, still are. In terms of Russia, you have the same sort of dynamic working. You have a tendency towards, the respect for indigenous culture and human rights,
Yeah.
and the ability to allow indigenous cultures or folk cultures to flourish within a federalist framework. What you have in China,
Russian is part of Western culture, right? Why they are not
well, what one
developing,
could
they
argue
are
it
not
either way.
civilized to be
Yeah,
liberal
one could argue it
democracy.
either way. But when you look at China, you don't see any of that. You don't see any liberal democracy. You don't see any respect for that in its past, and you don't see any in its current behavior. And you have a
Yeah.
choice between Russia and China. So to me, the choice is clearly Russia. And there is no third way, there is no other option. Um, so that's why Russia makes a lot of sense, because the alternative is China. Again, a good example is Mongolia. Mongolia was split into two countries, Southern Mongolia and the country that we now call Mongolia. Mongolia was under Russian tutelage, while Southern Mongolia was under the Chinese dictatorship, you could say. And what happened? In Southern Mongolia, you had genocide. The language was prohibited. The culture was extinguished.
You
It
mean
was
Inner
steamroll.
Mongolian in China?
Well, they call it Inner Mongolia, but actually that term is in
Yeah.
itself dismissive
In
of
China occupied
Mongolian identity. the Mongolians call it Southern Mongolia. The Chinese call it Inner Mongolia.
Yeah, they occupy.
So yeah, I would prefer to call it Southern Mongolia. But whatever you call it, that bit of Mongolia, that southern bit of Mongolia,
yes.
was wiped out. So you could look at what Burma's choice would be, either under Russian sponsorship or under Chinese sponsorship, and you can assume that the Chinese would destroy the Burmese culture as well as the 135 other ethnic minority cultures. And it would replace it with the Han culture.
Yeah.
And this is what's happened in Mandalay. So there really is no doubt. The other way is how to read the involvement of the United Nations and the human rights lobby. And I would argue that they are handmaidens for the Chinese approach. That they are not sensibly arguing for any third way. What they are doing is saying, essentially, with the globalists and the international corporate interests, let's destroy Burmese culture and market their raw materials and develop them as consumers as part of a global capitalist economy, and let's let China do the dirty work of genociding them. And China is not doing that actively now because it doesn't have enough weight yet in Myanmar. But if the people who are arguing for sanctions and supporting the United Nations have their way, someday China will have that much power.
Because China is in the critical position because they want Western country economic, Western country market and connection with Western economy, but they also want military or any security ideological assistance from Russia. So in this Burmese case, Russia has nothing to do. We don't have any tie or we don't have any neighbor connection or nothing much connection.
Well,
but Russia
seeks
is
to
doing
counterbalance.
Yeah, just assisting China because
I don't think so. I think Russia's long game is not to assist China, but it's to build a coalition that's strong enough to resist China. Russia has civilizationally been
Chinese-Russia coalition,
There is a Chinese-Russian coalition currently, but I would argue that it's very superficial. Historically, Russia and China have always been at odds, and Russia's culture and civilization is quite different from the Chinese. And if you ask your average Russian, what do you think about China? You'll get a very negative view. They don't like the Chinese and they don't like the Chinese government. You could say the same thing about China. If you ask the average Chinese what they think about China or the Chinese government, they don't like it much either. So there's an argument to be made there. But no, I think the argument that Russia is trying to assist China is feasible. I mean, you can make it. There's reasons to make it. But I think the argument that the United Nations and the United States and the various human rights lobbies are assisting China is a much stronger argument. It's much clearer to see that. So then you have, if you follow this analysis the way you're proposing it, you have both Russia and the United Nations trying to assist China and competing in a sense for seeing who can be the person best to assist China. Again, I trust Russia to resist China, not assist China, whereas I don't trust the United Nations to resist China. And again, looking at Cambodia, you see the United Nations assisting China. I don't think you have any example of Russia assisting China, except for their strategic agreement to oppose.
United Nations is not itself is not identity. It's not a entity. Russia and China, they are themselves are United Nations, you know. So United Nations is not separate entity. So there's nothing to blame United Nations, because United Nations is a coalition of bunch of nations. It doesn't
Mhm.
have one entity. So it's nothing we cannot blame on United Nations. I mean, the thing is, in this Burmese case, Russia has nothing to do with Burmese case. They, in the beginning, the China is, I mean, the China has to do with Burma, all the strategy and all these regional
Well,
issue,
China regards
international
Burma as a
system.
breakaway.
I
China
mean,
regards Burma the same way it regards Tibet or Taiwan. It regards Burma as a breakaway province. When the British
yeah,
invaded Burma or responded to the Burmese king's attacks on India, um, China protested and said that Britain was invading China. So China regards Burma as part of its not only sphere of interest, but part of its motherland, which is basically the way.
whatever. I mean, China has, it may be your hypothesis may be not true or maybe true about whether historically Chinese uh, or Burmese belong to China. No, that is
If
another
you look at the
issue.
Chinese,
Whatever,
yeah,
right
if
now,
you look at the
current
Chinese
situation,
records,
Chinese
China
has
considers
something,
Burma as part of China.
Chinese
If the
has,
Burmese consider Burma as a separate country, that's a joke,
no,
according to
no,
the Chinese, because China has a bigger army than Burma does.
whatever it is, that is a different topic about whether belong or not, but I don't agree. Anyway,
Well, of course, you cannot agree with
other
it.
issue, many issue, China has something to do with Burma. That is the reality. So from the beginning, February, China has very awkward position, because Chinese alone cannot deal, because all the Western country and all the democratic forces are pressuring. China has to lose. With the assistance of Russia, China position become up. So now is they are pretty much leveraged to beat Western US-led democratic forces. So now is very critical position. Even democratic forces can be in the losing position because Russia involving. That's why. Otherwise, you know, Chinese alone cannot do to competition in this competition for democratic and authoritarian, because Russia has its own problem because of Putin dictatorship and those elite dictatorship that export to the other country, to the authoritarian. So
I don't
that
know
is
why
matched with
how helpful it
very
is to
authoritarian.
characterize Putin as a dictator. Technically, he's a democratically elected leader, um, and the margins of victory for his success as a democratically elected leader, are so large as to make it pretty obvious that he is a democratically elected leader. The situation in Russia after the fall of the USSR, when you look at the reelection of Yeltsin and how that was accomplished, I think Yeltsin had 5% support. And then the United States under Bill Clinton did a big campaign to get Yeltsin elected and basically bribed a bunch of people and finagled the election and got Yeltsin reelected. Putin followed Yeltsin and was at first, heralded as a democratic leader. Then, when he refused to allow United States corporations essentially to, have their own way in Russia, then he
That's
became branded a
problem.
dictator. But he's the leader of Russia. I think everyone can agree with that. He's the president of Russia, or
I
the
mean, leader is true, but I mean, it doesn't mean democratic democracy is consolidated in the country, because one man show politics is not in democratic characteristic.
Mm.
It's been
Well,
20,
I
20
have
year,
Russian.
even more 20 year is becoming. So there's a lot of something wrong in the democratic system in Russia. They are not consolidated. They are not
I think
consolidated.
anyone talking about Russia would acknowledge that the government structure and even Putin's leadership is I want to say far from perfect, but that's not really the right way to put it. Um, in any event, you can see for yourself when you go to Russia that there is a great deal of personal freedom,
Yes.
that there is some press freedom there, and that there is individual liberty,
I'm
and
doubt
that
about
there is a
press
broad,
freedom.
yeah,
It's
there
pretty
is a
much
broad,
restricted media in Russia, I guess.
not compared to China. Compared to China, Russia is very free. So Russia does have, a wide swath of public opinion and discussion. It is limited and narrowed in the sense that it is not, unlimited. But nevertheless, again, it is much
Yeah,
better than China. It is
yeah.
much better than it
Of
was
course,
during the
China
days
is
of
not
the
a
USSR.
democracy. China is not democracy. We cannot compare with China. Russia is, they themselves categorize as democracy. They have to compare with other democratic country like French or British or
Mhm.
America. They should compare them, not with China. They have to compare what about freedom of expression, media
Mhm.
freedom, what about multi-party democracy system? Why Putin party is only exists? Why not opposition party are able to run the election? Why opposition leader are arrested or restricted? You know, that's, they have to compare with other democratic country, not China. China is not democracy. North Korea is not democracy. So that's my point, is Russia has something to do with their own democracy. They are in this dictatorship system that export to the other country. Then now they are exporting dictatorship to the Burma.
I don't think that that's a helpful way to look at it. They're dealing with the existing government of Myanmar, which is neither
It's
which
not
is
existing
essentially
government. It's not existing. It's a existing government was thrown away. Now it's the military rule.
what I would argue was thrown away was an elite Burmese faction, the NLD, that was trying to represent Chinese interests uh, and be a government like you said, that was not forging a nation out of Myanmar, but that was forging a puppet state for China, with them as the people who were the ruling elite. They would get the benefit from China running Myanmar. Now, if you don't like the Tatmadaw, you could say that the Tatmadaw are trying to do the same thing, that and you have a choice between who do you want to be your compradors. You're going to be ruled by China anyway, so do you want the NLD as your puppet leaders, or do you want the Tatmadaw as your puppet leaders? I don't
I
think that
mean,
argument holds up, however,
neither
because
one
the
is good.
Tatmadaw say that they want to resist China, while the NLD does not say that they want to resist China.
I mean,
So, and also the behavior of the Tatmadaw with regard to China has been irregular. They have not been good puppets. So the puppet master China is angry with the Tatmadaw, which is why you see this human rights lobby saying bad things about the Burmese military government. Because they're not doing the bidding of China. If they
that
were doing the bidding of China, then the Tatmadaw would be perfectly okay.
no, it
China,
is
as you mentioned,
easily.
is not a democratic country and does not have any trouble backing a military dictatorship. So China
No,
has no interest in democracy there.
of
So
course,
if China is
China doesn't
supporting the
interest.
NLD, it's not supporting the NLD because they want democracy. And then
No,
again, the way the election is held, the NLD wants a first past the post system, whereas
yeah,
the Tatmadaw wants proportional representation.
yeah,
Proportional representation favors the frontier areas.
yeah,
First past the post system favors the
mm,
Burmese elites.
yeah.
So there is no way you can look at the NLD and say it's a better avenue for democracy than the Tatmadaw. The Tatmadaw is actually a better avenue for democracy, but democracy might not be the best way to look at it. Again, the welfare of the Burmese people or something like that.
No, I mean, even among gang people, they are never they never agree each other. You know, that is the case between Burmese military and China. They both are
Mm-hmm.
gang, but they are all the time they are not agreeing each other. That is their condition right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the NLD case is, uh, you know, Chinese use them, NLD, civilian government, to be into their strategy. You know, that NLD has to ban to China because they don't want military was directly
Well, or you could
that
argue they really just
that
don't care about the
they
country. The
they
the
don't
the, the
want
NLD only
directly.
cares about their own power.
I mean, they don't want
I,
the military directly, you know, attacking civilian government. Otherwise, if they don't
I
ban
don't
to
think the NLD
China,
cares about
if they
that.
don't ban
That
to
that's
China, military can be anytime directly oppress the civilian government. They were oppressed. So NLD has no choice. So they banned China. They thought uh, military uh, upper hand will be normal. But in this transition period, or for a new government, and in this unexpected time, military suddenly coup, you know, even though China not full support, but the military excuse for some reason and they coup immediately. That NLD was mistakenly they were attacked because they were unprepared, you know. They thought China, they banned to China, they can able to easily manage military, but it's not really they can manage military. Military has some, you know, secret plan. So they are doing in the gap between diplomatic relation between NLD and China, and those transition time they did coup. So this is a NLD mistake. NLD has to prepare, you know, that civilian government. They never prepare. That is a thing. So either military or NLD is not doing good for nation building. But no choice, Burmese people, they support NLD, but now unmature politics, it become attacked by military. So this is the reality. So that's why we have big suffering again by Russia. You know, Russia is cruel. They don't care about human rights and human value for Burmese people. That will be Russia has to
I would
pay
argue
for
that
that.
Russia cares much more than China does. Much more.
They better than China, but they both are still bad for Burmese people.
Well, I think the Mongolians would agree with you, you know, and I think even an independent observer would agree with you. what's his name, Owen Lattimore at the time, looking at the problem of Myanmar or Mongolia, said that under Russia, Mongolian society would suffer a great deal, but it would survive. Whereas under China, there would be no chance of survival. And his words turned out to be prophetic, because that is what happened. Mongolian society has survived under Russian domination, tutelage, or you could say oppression. Either way, there's a chance for Burma, Myanmar, the frontier cultures to survive under the sponsorship of Russia. Whereas the other alternative, they have no chance to survive. So yeah, Russia isn't perfect, but it's
Yeah,
better than the alternative.
of course, I agree. Russia is better than China, but we can find better than Russia one.
Well,
There
this
is
would
an
have,
option. Burma has
yes.
option. There's better one we can find. That's why I'm raising the issue. We need to build scientific way, from the very beginning. First, we have to digest. If you want to be a leader for a country, for democratic leader or either military leader, if you clear and if you digest very well about political science, systematic building, nation building, you have option. You can exclude China, you can exclude Russia, you can build very nice democracy country. That is option. But now either military leaders and democratic leaders, they are not digest scientific way of nation building. They are not digest. They all are, want to be, they all are fighting for their self-power. They are not dedicated for the real, very good nation building. They just want for their own self-power. That's military is pulling for themselves here and here. And again, NLD, at least they are legitimate democratic government, but they still pulling for self-power. My point is we have to forget all these things for self-power or self-worshipping or one-man show politics or emotional-based nation building. We have to forget everything. If you really want to be nice, very good democracy country, as long as you want to be a leader, you need to digest very well scientific way of nation building. As long as you want to be a leader, otherwise you better quit your shit. It's better not to involve in this kind of politics. Otherwise, you are making trouble. You are responsible for the blood who already died. Over 700 people died. Military responsible, number one, and the other is a civilian leader. They are responsible. Without their clear image, clear digest, scientific way of political building, all are selfish power making for themselves. They are responsible for the blood. That is my point. There is option of we know if you are very clear image, if you digest political scientific way of nation building, we know there is a way, very clear way. So I'm not interested for emotional national building or just for one-man show politics. No, that is out of date. In this modern day, we have to do scientific way with match to the international system. So that is option.
I think that's actually the dialectic or the dichotomy that you have there, and again, this third way that you're proposing, if you give it the name scientific nation building,
Yeah, scientific
um,
way of
it,
nation building.
it could be something that you become too attached to as an idea.
Real
The
realism.
Well, yeah, I-
I
well,
mean,
scientific on one hand and humane on the other. You, again, if you look at Russia and the USSR's history of um, dealing with ethnic minorities, tribal regions, separate countries, even a country like Poland emerged from the USSR's dominance, intact as a culture. It was bruised, it was hurt. Many Polish people resented being ruled by the USSR, but other Polish people appreciated the tutelage of the USSR and liked things about the Soviet system. So it was a mixed bag. Again, you can look in Tibet at the way China has treated Tibet, and you cannot find a Tibetan who says that they like anything about the way China has treated them. So there is, uh, given your definition of scientific, there are aspects of the Russian approach that are scientific, and
no,
there are not
no.
aspects of the Chinese approach that are scientific. And if you wanted to say that better than Russia alone, you should have a coalition of Vietnam
Okay.
and France and other Indo-Chinese kind of historically interested countries. Korea and Japan, certainly Japan has a huge interest in Burma, being on the same page as the Russians. And I would agree wholeheartedly. A coalition between Russia and Japan would be much better than Russia alone. And likewise would be much stronger in fighting China. So trying to get, I think the first thing to do is to acknowledge that the Tatmadaw is the legitimate government of Myanmar, and that their intentions in doing this coup were for the best interests of the Burmese people or the
How can
Myanmarese
you
people.
make legitimate the army who are killing 7-year-old kids and a lot of teenagers?
Well,
That's
again, I look
already
at this.
wrong. That's
I look
already
at the
wrong, their
700
intention.
the 700 people. The Tatmadaw say it's more like 250, but whatever the number, you could argue it's too high. There shouldn't ever be one killed. But then you could look at the million who were killed in India during partition and say, which is better, 700 or 1 million? Um, and then you can again look at the hundreds of thousands who are genocided in Tibet, or the millions that are currently being genocided in Xinjiang in eastern Turkmenistan by the Chinese, and saying, is it necessary? Is that sacrifice of 700 necessary to forestall hundreds of thousands or millions being murdered by a Chinese solution? So I don't know what to say.
I mean,
The
it's
details of
not acceptable if any security force want to be legitimate, if their standard is below professional, they are bullying and killing innocent is unacceptable. If during a war, both sides are weapon, that is acceptable. I can say there is a military is a reason to shoot, but attacking innocent is unacceptable. That is not long time. It is nobody will accept that is a legitimate. It is a danger. We are holding, bomb in our hands. So we have to clear those things about military. So in terms of military legitimation is out of question. And what my point is, the international society, especially democratic forces can they can lay out some roadmap for the future of Burmese nation building in scientific way. I mean, one my scientific way is those developed country. Example, recently developed South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, on that part of scientific way, although like they are not perfect democracy, or Singapore restricted freedom of expression, but they are on the part of a scientific way. What my point is, that is scientific way, because they are following international system and intact with international system. That is the structure issue. That is, they are doing very well. They are following the structure very well. But Burmese case, first thing, we don't have a person who digests to adapt into that structure. And after then, we have to lay out that nation building. I thought civilians should be pretty much, they have to let them allow at least, to build in systematic way of nation building as in line with democratic system. They should allow, but their opinion is, their behavior is, I totally fed up, because they still struggling for their own self-powering. How can we build, a genuine, a good nation? Even they have no office, no weapon, no territory. They have nothing, even nothing government. They still want to be possession and self-powering. How military were not one. They already have big power, military power, and they have the office, government office. So even the civilian democratic government, they are still selfish and want to self-power holding, and they don't want to give up or let them lead by who are very knowledgeable, who know very well about scientific way of nation building. They don't let them lead or let them guide them, but they are still digging for their own self-powering. That is shame. Why not military will not dig for their own power? Even they have nothing, they still want to be power, Military will, of course, they will take a power. I mean, we have a lot of morally still problem, psychologically still problem. That is called emotional problem, Burmese political culture is still emotional problem. I really not interested this kind of government. We don't have nothing resources. Why you want to be president in that organization? You want to be a position in that organization. You should let them do somebody who know very clear direction, very clear road, who digest very well. Let them do. Why you still want to control without resources power? Two political culture I've been telling you. One is military group. Second is a protest group. A lot of opposition leader. So this group are doing emotion and illusion for Burmese people. They both are not good. Nobody are good. They both are selfish. They are not committed for nation building, and they are not architects. And I think the future is not good so far. And still now it's a failed state. Let's see next month. Then we will talk again next month what the update information.